This clip is brought to you by 8 Sleep Mattresses, the temperature-controlled Tesla of beds that automates your sleep. Sleep better and enjoy this clip.
Right now, you can go and train and do just about anything that you want in strength, right? If you wanted to set your sights again on an 800-pound deadlift, I'm sure you could probably accomplish that. If you wanted to get back in gear, you could probably do some of those things. Do you think that those would any of those things interest you anymore, or are you just like you did that and you're cool with it?
I felt like at each division of what I did, I felt like I gave everything I had. And I think the only thing to gain from going back and doing that is just injury. I mean, at this point, I feel like, some people look back, I think the people that have those issues are people that maybe have not attained the goals that they thought were possible. I went far beyond what I thought my body was capable of, both physically and mentally. And so with that being said, I don't have any regrets or anything I felt like I left on the table. But I also feel like I got extremely lucky that I didn't accumulate any mileage or injuries. So it's kind of like, how many times can you go to the blackjack table and win before you lose? And for me, it's not worth losing anymore. I mean, let's just put this in perspective. How many fucking guys can squat over 500 pounds for close to 25 reps? Not many. And only 13,000 people gave a fuck. Now, if that video would have went viral and it had 10 million views, and people were like, dude, you got to try something crazier, or that would have picked up maybe some bigger sponsors for the YouTube channel, maybe I consider it. But the mileage to risk ratio is not fucking worth it. I did that because I thought that I could beat Platz's record. And in my opinion, I did. What's the point after that? It's to the point now you get old enough that you start looking back at the shit you and I did and you start going, okay, that was fucking insane. Now, what's the point of it? The point of it is that I pushed my limits as far as I thought I could, and I got away with no injuries. So to me, I won, because there's so many guys that we competed against that can't fucking walk good anymore. They can't even train anymore because they're so beat up. Somehow, either because of my smarts or some luck or some education, I got the ability to push past that and go further than I ever thought I could, but without accumulation of mileage. And that was my whole goal. I wanted people to realize, like, look, maybe I had a little bit of gifts when I was a kid and I had the potential to be stronger than a lot of people, but I lasted for 30 years too. You can't take that away. And so for me, it's one of those things where I just felt like I didn't leave anything on the table and any particular thing. Now I just want to feel good, look good, be healthy, including, constant blood work. And I was always pretty healthy for being a bigger guy, but you can't sustain 300 pounds in your 40s and 50s and not retain some health issues. So right now, 255 to 63, my blood work looks amazing. And that's where I know my body needs to be. If I push into the 270s, my triglycerides and blood sugar start to act weird no matter how clean I try to do it. So it's not worth it to me. Yeah. And that's always what I think people need to balance is get as good as you can at whatever you want to be good at, but don't put your health behind that, because eventually you'll have neither, right? If you're not healthy getting up to that point, you will not sustain it. And then you're going to pay for it more than you think.
How can other people do that in whatever particular sport they're interested in, do you think? Like, because a lot of people, they'll do jujitsu for a long time. They get real excited. They jump into it for, they're doing it frequently. They're doing it at a high intensity. We see it a lot with lifting, and a lot of lifters will complain to me like, man, how do you keep your elbows and how do you keep your knees? And I'm thinking like, well, during my powerlifting career, I did run into issues with the elbows and the knees and stuff like that. But right now I feel fucking awesome. I don't have any more problems. So how do you think some other people can avoid the trap of like being so obsessed with just getting better today and maybe see off into the distance a little bit so they can?
Well, maybe that's a trait that I just have that gives me the advantages. But I will say this. One, always get your blood work done. There's always some creeping issue that either you're fighting genetically or because you're abusing bad foods or whatever, bad genetics. So I'll give you an example. When my dad found out he was sick, if I live another year, I will outlive my dad. When my dad found out he was sick, his triglycerides were 1,270 at the doctor.
Oh my goodness.
High's 300. He had cancer so bad that within 6 months, he was 6'5", weighed 280, and in 6 months, he was 90 pounds. And they told him, it's like, we're just going to try to keep you comfortable because it's everywhere. And so he was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam. He also was a smoker, which accelerated it.
Yeah.
So a lot of different compounding factors. But the point is I think the first thing you need to do is make sure that you're trying to do everything you can to be healthy. The second thing I think is just as, or maybe if not more important and more controllable, is always be looking at structural and muscular weaknesses. So your training should be developing the shortcomings of your physical body, meaning if you have bad hamstring to quadricep ratio, you need to get that closer to a proper ratio, which should be as close to 1-to-1 as possible. If you don't have a strong core or transverse abdominal muscles, which I think is the most important ab muscle you have, which is the deeper one that goes this way instead of the six pack that everybody thinks. The TVA is actually what braces in and locks.
Is that more like obliques and things of that nature?
It'd be underneath the oblique.
Okay.
So that muscle group, in my opinion, is really connected heavily into the lower back and back injuries. So TVA is insanely important to be strong.
So how do you, real quick, pausing on the TVA, how do you work on that specifically? What movements would you suggest?
Well, you got planks, right? When you squat and deadlift, the body forces them to turn on as long as your posture and everything is
So maybe
sound.
do some stuff without a belt here and there, something like that?
Beltless training, side planks, leg raises. Anything that's going to require bracing is going to require TVA. Anything that attaches the upper and lower extremities together to produce a movement is going to attack the TVA.
Farmer carry.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Farmer's carry, overhead squats, which, I'm not a huge fan of overhead stuff,
But maybe walking with something overhead.
yeah, exactly. So my point is one, make sure you're healthy internally.
Yeah.
Two, make sure you're healthy externally by meaning look at your posture and muscle balances and make sure that those are as even as you possibly can. But the problem is say you have a hamstring weakness, which I would say 60% of the people watching this, hamstrings are not strong enough to do what they want to do. Would we agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're going to make a program for somebody's hamstrings to get better, how long does that actually take? Well, I can tell you because the Bulgarians and Russians wrote about it, 36 months.
Why did they come up with that
fucking
number?
years. Because what I think they didn't really say why they came up with the number, because the hamstring is not a great leverage style muscle. Let's look at the quadricep, for example. If we look at the quadricep, you got multiple muscles coming down to the kneecap. The kneecap is not only a protector of the knee if you fall, it's a lever system. It's the only joint in your body that has a bone over the joint to create a lever.
That floats, yeah.
So how in the fuck does the hamstring stay in balance with the quadricep with that level of leverage in the front? It's insanely hard.
Yeah.
So the Soviets figured out a long time ago that it's going to take 3 years to create some sort of balance at that joint, which is why I feel we have so many knee issues, but it's also why I feel it's very important to squat with vertical shanks and learn how to do that before you go to any other training style. I'm not saying you don't use it occasionally, like a knee over toe or an Olympic style squat, but learn how to squat using the posterior chain as a primary mover because it's probably your primary fucking weakness. I think one of the biggest reasons that I lasted as long as I did, and I'm still around and can still do crazy things, is because I'll do phases where I work on isolateral balance, so like left and rights. I'll work on phases where I'm working on speed work more than max work. I'm working on straining more than conditioning. Then I go to other phases where I'm working on capacity versus strength. It doesn't mean I don't maintain those other areas. It just means the emphasis is switched. So if you look at the system that I use, the winning warm-ups, they mostly stay around a 4 RPE. The reason is because if you go 4 RPE in that, 9 RPE on your main lift, which is either as fast or as heavy as possible, and around 8 RPE on the accessories, do the math and tell me what percentage that comes out to be. It's like 73%. What did I just say? You have to keep your percentages as an overall basis around 75% of workout as far as total intensity, or you're going to get beat up or get hurt. And so when I saw that, either from the East Germans or the Bulgarian systems, I started realizing that there was some magic in those percentages. So RPE 4 on the warm-up stays that way all the time because I want that average of 75% of total exertion at the end of the cumulative percentage of strain.
Hey, I know you guys enjoyed the video, so like, comment, subscribe, and head to the Power Project Discord below. Talk to y'all later.